There was a moment, not dramatic, not loud, just persistent. A moment where someone stood their ground every single day. They weren't in a battle they chose, yet they found themselves defending their position constantly. Their energy was always up, always braced. Conversations felt like negotiations. Decisions felt like pressure tests. Even rest had a sharp edge to it, because part of them stayed alert, scanning, ready to push back if needed. They had become very good at holding their stance. Strong, capable, resilient. But strength, when held too long without release, begins to tire the nervous system. And even warriors need a place where they don't have to prove anything. This person wasn't weak. They were overextended. And they began to notice it in small ways. Shorter patience, shallow breathing, the sense that even neutral moments carried tension. Their body was speaking before their mind was ready to listen. So they paused. Not to quit, not to give in, but to ask a quieter, braver question. Is this still where I need to be? At first, the answer didn't arrive clearly. There was hesitation, a mental stillness that felt more like fog than peace. On one hand, staying felt familiar, predictable, even if uncomfortable. On the other hand, leaving felt uncertain. Like, what if stepping away meant losing ground? Or what if choosing calm meant abandoning purpose? They didn't rush to decide. Instead, they allowed themselves to sit inside the not knowing. They stopped forcing clarity and simply noticed the weight of holding everything alone. And something subtle happened there. When they stopped pushing for an answer, their body softened just enough to hear its own signals. The breath deepened, the jaw unclenched, the mind, no longer pressured to resolve everything immediately, began to organize itself. This was self-regulation in its earliest form. Not control, but permission. Permission to pause without collapsing. Permission to rest without retreating. They realized they didn't need to choose a side right away. They just needed to stop fighting themselves. And then came the spark. Not loud, not explosive, just a warm pulse of inspiration that whispered, "You don't have to leave everything behind. You just have to change how you are carrying it." That insight was powerful, but also disruptive. Because once you feel that inner ignition, you can't ignore it. The problem wasn't lack of energy, it was misdirected energy. All that fire had been used to defend instead of to create. And creation requires vulnerability. The obstacle wasn't external resistance anymore. It was the fear of letting energy move freely again. What if, without the armor, they felt too much? What if calm revealed grief or desire or truth they had postponed? This is where many people turn back, but they didn't. They chose curiosity over control. They began experimenting, not dramatically, but gently. They noticed that their system went into overdrive and practiced responding instead of reacting. They allowed moments of playfulness back into their days, small risk, creative thoughts, new rhythms. They followed what felt alive rather than what felt obligatory. This phase wasn't polished. It was exploratory. Sometimes they moved too fast and had to recalibrate. Sometimes they hesitated and laughed at themselves. But growth was happening. Their relationship with their own energy was changing. Instead of burning it all at once or suppressing it entirely, they learned to circulate it. Passion became information rather than impulse. Excitement became guidance rather than pressure. They were learning how to move forward without abandoning themselves. And with each small adjustment, the inner waters grew calmer, not still, but navigatable. Eventually, movement became natural again. They didn't charge ahead recklessly. They moved with intention. There was confidence now, not the brittle kind that needs validation, but the embodied kind that trusts its own timing. Their actions carried momentum, but not urgency. Their presence felt grounded, yet animated. They still cared deeply. They still acted boldly. But now they knew when to engage and when to glide past what no longer required their energy. This was the full circle moment. What changed wasn't the world, it was how they traveled through it. They were no longer stuck defending a single position. They were in motion, aligned with purpose, regulated from the inside out. And here's the quiet truth of it. Self-regulation isn't about dimming your fire. Rather, it's about choosing where and how that fire moves. Sometimes, the bravest act isn't standing your ground. It's boarding a calmer passage and trusting that forward motion doesn't have to feel like a fight. So if you find yourself constantly holding, bracing, proving, consider this your invitation to soften just enough to move. Not away from who you are, obviously, but deeper into a version of yourself that travels with steadiness and clarity and ease. And as you do, you'll notice something profound. Your flow doesn't need to be perfectly still. It's just a matter of you allowing yourself to move someplace kinder.